I think there seems to be a lot of focus on using AI to create tests, which is obviously really important. But I think using AI to evaluate human competence is probably going to be really, really hot in the next few years.
Hello and welcome to the Test Community Network weekly update. My name's Tim Burnett. I hope you're all safe and well. It's the 23rd of January we're sharing this update. And as ever, if you see anything in here you wish to see more about and learn more about, then go to the testcommunity.network website. You can subscribe for free, where you'll receive an excellent email that comes through on a weekly basis, which is packed full of events and information and news resources. This saves you kind of looking elsewhere for them. So a lot of savings in there. In this episode this week, we're talking to the, I'm going to say famous John Kleeman, certainly very well known within the assessment community. And John's going to be talking about making good things happen. We'll look at the responsible use of AI within assessment and exploring what the future for AI and assessment looks like. As ever, some updates for your events that are coming up. So we've got the Leadership in Higher Education conference that's taking place as a virtual online proportion of that. There's the leading learning unlocking potential using digital credentials to verify and showcase skills development. That's a webinar that's taking place. There's the Workforce Council professionally speaking, embracing AI in education. JISC are standing up with a centre for a summative and formative assessment, the future session. That should be really worth looking at. Certiverse Mission Control, the future of certification, emerging trends in evolving industries. It's worth checking those guys out. And we've got Cambridge Assessment Network, a 101 introducing principles of assessment. Now, I'm hoping to have a Cambridge Assessment team on a future episode coming up, so we'll learn more about some of the training courses, but some excellent stuff there. So if you really want to kind of delve deep into the world of assessment and learn something, then it's a good place to look. John and I talked briefly about it as part of our conversation, but they've also got a conference coming up. I think it's in April, so it's worth checking that out. Other things that are going on in the space and research. So in the marketplace on the Test Community Network, I put in loads of, there's all the companies there that are operating in space, but there's lots of news. I'm putting more and more news and research pieces in here at the moment. So answering watermarking, answer watermarking. So this is a piece of research that suggests that you can watermark some of the responses, and ensuring academic integrity. So another one that's kind of approaching the whole topic of AI and integrity in higher education. Obviously is a big point going on. Also, the educational duct tape, Adam Sparks teaching writing in the age of AI. Worth having a listen to that. And we've also got the education and post-CS thoughts conversation with Ben there. A lot of CS is the big conference that takes place in America, where I suppose all the emerging tech and trends come out. I was listening to a podcast that was looking at what was there. Some wild and wonderful implementations of AI, a cat bed with AI embedded in it. It seems to be the big thing, obviously, this year. So yeah, worth checking out. So let's get on to today's special. Here's my conversation with John Kleeman, and we're talking about responsible AI. Over to myself and John in conversation. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you're well.
Good morning, Tim. Really nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. So we're going to be talking about the kind of about AI and education and assessment and what you you see as being responsible kind of uses. And I suppose that's the kind of first question I want to really put to you. You know, what is responsible AI in education assessment? What does that look like to you?
So I think you've got to start with why you do assessment in the first place, and then work out how AI can help. And I think assessment obviously is a way in which we fairly measure people. And I always like to think that assessment is one of these really win-win things. For individuals, it helps them demonstrate their achievement, showcase what they can do. For organizations, it helps you recruit, select people. And for society, it helps reduce skill changes, put people in the right place. So I think but assessment is also a gateway to life chances for young people. Tests and exams are very imperfect. We know lots of issues around them, but they do provide some opportunities for people to advance on merit. The world is, in my view, a lot better place because of assessment than it would be without it. Without it, you'd have to sort of take people into places based on who you know, or cliques, or prejudice. And so, although there are huge weaknesses in assessments, it's very much people do tend to do well in assessments, tend to have privileged families. There's too many instances of bias, but it is used in almost every country in the world, and it roughly works. And I mean, you and I and lots of the people listening to this are in the assessment world for our work life, and I believe we make the world a better place. And I think responsible AI is about making tests better and finding the various issues that challenge tests and make them better. So one of those is efficiency. Is very, very expensive to make a good quality test. So good quality AI can help make it more efficient by helping create the content, maybe helping secure it, helping it evaluate things. Also, there is some human bias in assessment, and I know people are worried, rightly, about AI bias, but potentially humans and AI can have less bias. I mean, one thing, for example, that I'm really excited that Lunosity are doing is that we're putting in some DEI checking into authoring, so that when you write a question, it will automatically have an opportunity to check it for bias and flag an issue that you can then human review. So I think responsible AI is really about making tests better. And there are a lot of different aspects to it, because, in fact, the ATP AI subcommittee that I co-chair produced a document which, if you're interested in it, I really recommend getting hold of. It's very inexpensive on the ATP website, called Creating Responsible and Ethical AI Policies for Assessment Organizations, and that has 28 different things to think about. I mean, some of those things like supplier vetting monitoring. It's no good having a policy just for your own organization if your suppliers are using AI potentially irresponsibly. I think it's about human oversight, which is a lot more subtle thing that you want, because it's not just lip service. It's about humans genuinely providing oversight to different things. It's about fairness and addressing bias. It's about continuously monitoring, because AI can change. And it's really about human rights as well, and making sure that AI supplements humans and doesn't replace them. So I think it's quite subtle, responsible AI, but it is really, really important. And assessment is beneficial, and obviously education beneficial too. And I think it's important we're transparent. It's important that we learn, because things are changing a lot. But it's an exciting place to be.
And I suppose it's on the transparency point of view. I think one of the slight technical issues that we might encounter is, as you know, organizations that are using AI in different ways, they'll be happy to talk about it to a certain degree and talk about, you know, their activities, but there might still be a degree of kind of commercial competition that they don't want to give away too many of their secrets. Do you think that, you know, that kind of transparency is going to change in you know, how people share information? Do we have to become even more transparent about the way we work, or do you think there's still going to be a bit of a challenge?
So I think there's a different perspective from test programs and vendors. I think test programs have no reason not to be transparent, and I think they need to be transparent. Maybe some vendors will want to think they have some secret source or things like that, but I think that there is a lot of benefit in transparency, and also things like the EU AI Act and other regulations elsewhere are going to encourage transparency. And I think it's important, if you're taking a test and AI is involved, say, in helping score it, then I think it is important that there is transparency. And I think one of the challenges is that AI might well be better at scoring than people and fairer, but nevertheless, it's not explainable. And so I think there are some important philosophical challenges there, and also about whether it's fair and right that we should be judged by machines, as it were, and all those kind of issues. But I think transparency, the trend is transparency, and I'm sure that's the way we're going to go.
Yeah, I think that point about marking and I suppose the consistency side of things, because if you do throw in some answers to be marked by generative AI and it comes back, and even when you ask for a reason to come back and a score, every time you do it, even with the same response that you're dealing with, it will come back with some slight variations on it. I think there's a degree that if you did that with a human, do you think there'd be slightly more consistency if you kept giving the human the same answer to mark? Do you think
So
you get degree of consistency
maybe I
there?
suppose they get fed up, fed up,
Yeah.
and say, "Why are you asking me? Why asking me again?" Whereas
Not
they're like
asking
being
me.
patient. But I think the data suggests that human marking is very unreliable, particularly in some of the more is better in sort of maths or things like that, but it's less good in some of the humanities. And I think there were some figures quoted with some quite shocking shocking data about quality of marking, consistency of marking with humans. And I think it's a big challenge. So I think, and then the other thing is you can have an AI and a human both score something and use that, or use AI to evaluate the quality of human scoring. But I actually think that that AI evaluation of human competence, particularly with all the challenges of AI being used to answer questions, and so some of the more simpler multiple choice and similar things being a challenge because AI can answer it for you. So what I think we're going to be doing is getting people to do more complicated tasks that get assessment, performance tasks, or practical tasks, or asking them to speak about things, in which case I think AI would be pretty good for evaluating that, and it needs a lot of human oversight and things around about it. But I think there's a lot of promise there for having AI help evaluate people's competence.
Excellent. And I suppose the fundamentally, the fair and valid assessment, it's not really changed in terms of how we perceive a fair and valid test. And when you come back to why you're doing the assessment in the first place, AI is just potentially just a tool within that process. And as long as you're still asking those fair and valid questions about the assessment, then you're effectively ticking the boxes. It's just another area to interrogate, do you think, as part of the process?
Yeah, but I think it can be a little more subtle than that, because I think we've got this concept of sort of stealth assessment, that somebody might assess you while you're working. For example, maybe AI could be looking at the two of us having this interview now and evaluate you as an interviewer, or me as an AI expert, or otherwise, and make some evaluation on that. So I think it does open the opportunity that we get practically assessed in the workplace or in education, doing things that was not possible before. So I think it is possible that the nature of questions will change, and that there could be more complicated and more questions that would be harder to score, but an AI can score them. I mean, or chatbot questions. There's something which I think people are experimenting with. We've certainly experimented with them at Lunosity, that maybe you engage somebody in conversation about a subject with chat, and then make an evaluation about their knowledge. And so I think there is some opportunity for new question styles and new ways of assessing, as well as the older ones. But yeah, fairness maybe has some subtleties with AI, but stays the same. And validity is, of course, central. Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. So the other kind of area that I wanted to kind of delve into, because we're kind of talking about here and now in a way, but we've seen recent reports saying that ChatGPT, their new O3 model, is kind of almost surpassing humans at capabilities of kind of PhD standard. The kind of their ability to kind of reason and problem solve very complex mathematical equations and those kind of things. The conversation's almost gone from artificial general intelligence, which has been the kind of the main point of conversation, and I think Sam Altman, he believes at OpenAI that they'll achieve that by the end of 2025, which would be interesting. But now the conversation's moved on to artificial superintelligence, the kind of a bigger domain. What do you see as being the impact for the kind of the assessment world if AI is more intelligent than us?
Well, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I think we've got to stay a little bit grounded here. I mean, I went to a cafe this morning and had an omelette cooked for me. It wasn't cooked by a machine or a AI. I went to the dentist yesterday, and she was very much human, and I'm not sure I would have trusted an AI to go in my mouth, and I'm not sure that's going to change in the next few years. But we are in super exciting times, and I mean, really, this is possibly the most. I mean, we thought the internet was exciting, we thought the PC was exciting, but this might be more exciting and more changing, and it's really, really interesting times. And those people who are just starting out in their careers now have got a fantastic opportunity to do things. But I think the world that we're going to be educating and assessing people for is going to be very, very different in 5-10 years' time than it is now. And the future human is going to be human plus AI, where maybe the whole thing about what it is to be humans can be different if you've got an AI in your brain that you can maybe communicate to. Who knows what it's going to be like for our children or our children's children? I mean, it's just literally science fiction. But in terms of being more practical, well, I think AI can be hugely helpful in learning, and we've got the real opportunity that we've got however many billion people it is on the planet, and AI can help empower them and make not just the wealthy people well educated, but everybody well educated, and we don't know what that's going to give. And also, in terms of assessment, we've got the potential that AI might be able to assess human competence much better than we're able to now. But are we going to be happy with that? You're going to be happy if your child doesn't get into university because AI says that somebody else is better, and you don't really understand why? I don't know. What do you think, Tim, as you're a keen observer of this?
I think it's that what you say about that kind of collaboration side of things, and that's the challenge that we're going to have to kind of unpick, because when before you mentioned the calculators, it became acceptable for calculators to be present within the vast majority of examinations. There was still somewhere that it wouldn't be, but when it came to the question of should we allow candidates to have access to the internet during an examination, then that's been something that nobody's really, apart from maybe not even open book exams, there's probably very few exams. It's certainly in a summative context, though, high stakes, where you have internet access. And I don't know whether that's because the internet, is a wildly free set of resources, which effectively a chat GPT is, because it's just the internet. Vast majority of the internet condensed down into a series of parameters and a random series of text. But I don't know. I think perhaps if you would have access to ChatGPT or something like that, if it was almost like a trained model that was defined for a particular job, and that was kind of acknowledged that is the one that you're working with. But I find it unusual that someone would break the kind of convention of saying, okay, you've got free access to the internet and ChatGPT, etc., to conduct this high-stakes summative assessment. I think the kind of question, kind of stepping out from that, is, I suppose, what is the future of knowledge-based testing, really? If we're, as a society, we've kind of resigned ourselves to having access to all this kind of data. But I suppose, so thank you for throwing it back to me. I don't know the answer to that one either. I do think it's going to significantly change where we're going with things. What do you think then, as the kind of the industry, what do you think that we're not talking about? Obviously we're talking about the future. What does the future of assessment look like? But what are we not talking about in the assessment industry at the moment?
So I think one thing comes back to your collaboration thought a moment ago. In the assessment world, we tend to test individuals and always have done. So basically, somebody passes an exam and it gets qualified. But in the real world, people do things with teams. If you go to a restaurant, it's not you want one single stunning cook. You want a team of cooks. If we think about any company, it's a team that makes that company. And it's almost like if you look at any kind of sport, I mean, soccer in the UK or other things elsewhere, a team sport is not, there might be a brilliant individual player, but unless it all works together as a team, it doesn't work. And I think we have not been very strong on assessing teams. And I think using AI, you say you've got a team, who do you need to add to it? How do you construct a team with an organization to do a project? Those kind of things don't seem to be covered very much, and seems a very interesting area. Something else, but I think people do talk about this a bit, is what do we assess? Because I think the skills that people will need in the future are going to be very different. Yet our schools are still teaching and assessing things that are much the same as they have been for generations. And it goes also back into testing a human plus AI. I think there seems to be a lot of focus on using AI to create tests, which is obviously really important. But I think using AI to evaluate human competencies is probably going to be really hot in the next few years. People have been scoring essays with AI for a while, but it's going to be more scoring unstructured tasks, scoring accountancy things, and different ways of scoring more complicated things. And certainly at Onosity, we're putting a lot of effort into that area, and I think others are as well. And I think allowing people to do more complicated assessment type tasks, and then you're using AI to help score them, is the way ahead, and also makes it much harder to cheat, because at the moment AI, if you're maybe measuring a practical task, go up on a ladder and change that light, or give a presentation to somebody, then AI is not going to be so good at doing that in a way that can't be seen, but AI could be good at helping evaluate it.
So, in terms of the collaboration one, I think is a really interesting one. That yes, the idea that you could take someone's assessment. Do you think, just kind of while we're in this kind of area at the moment, do you think we're going to see, I suppose, an end to kind of summative assessments? Kind of that kind of the last stage of the journey. And I think you touched on it earlier, kind of expanding out the assessment throughout the process. Do you think that it's going to be, you're going to have an AI when you're joining a task or a job that's going to both support you and work with you, but also is going to be monitoring you and assessing you along that journey? Do you think that's something that we could see?
I think it's a really interesting concept, and in a way a lot fairer. You don't have a bad day. Somebody isn't ill at the time of the summative test, and it screws them all up, or they have test anxiety and things like that. So I think there's a lot of potential fairness and inclusivity benefits of that. But equally, there's the issue that people learn in lots of different ways and different pathways, and so maybe a single summative assessment does measure that competence at the end of the journey. So I think there's perhaps room for both, but I do think that more of this ongoing assessment is interesting and is likely to get stronger. But as far as I can see into the murky future, maybe both have a place.
I think it's going to depend, isn't it, on the program, the qualification, the skill set, the everything that's there. But I think where I see it's quite exciting is that I've always people obviously all gravitate to some of the more prestigious and kind of well-known assessment models as kind of guided to the future. But I've always credited organizations that do vocational based assessment kind of as being probably bigger leaders in the adoption of some kind of digital technologies on that journey. And that's where I think we're probably going to see more movement, more traction, and more innovation maybe in that area.
Could be, but some of the big high stakes testing organizations are very conservative, and perhaps for good reason, but they're not natural innovators, some of them. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, anyone who knows you knows that you've been in the industry for some time. You're kind of an expert in your field, and you've seen a lot of change and growth over that time. And this isn't a question because I know your career's not over yet, John, but you've got a lot more to give to us. But what advice would you give to, I suppose, the next generation of assessment professionals about how the next 20, 30 years are going to progress, and how they should think about their careers and their motives, their values, their innovation, their mindset? What do you want to pass on to those kind of the upcoming John Kleemans of the future?
So I think you're in a very exciting space if you are starting out in this field, or in your earlier days in this field, because I've been through the PC revolution, which was fantastic for assessment as we started to digitize assessment, the internet, which really enabled assessment at a difference, but AI is bigger. And just as we discussed, you and I know an awful lot about AI and assessment, but we still had a lot of uncertainty in our conversation today. There are so many things that nobody knows yet, and if you're in this field, you can invent this, you can make this happen, and in the future it will be you who have defined how assessment comes. So I think go for it. I think it's a really exciting time. Some advice would be connect with others in the industry, whether via the different test community networks are a great thing, but via the Assessment Association, the ATP, the various other organizations out there, that's a good way of knowing what's happening. Learn the basics of measurements principles, things like reliability, validity. I know them pretty reasonably well now, but I wish I'd known them more earlier on in my journey, because I think that would have helped me. So I think there's a lot of good learning materials or people out there to learn from. And I think think of the learner and the test taker and be driven by their needs. There are billions of people in the world out there, and the testing industry does its best as it can do to support them, but there are many people who are not yet impacted by it, and who AI and future assessment might allow it. And it's a great area to work in you can feel that you can help make the world a better place. I do feel very proud for what we've accomplished and the whole community has accomplished in making assessment. I think assessment is makes education more successful, and education drives the world, gives people life opportunities, and makes the world a better place. And we're in a good place, and this is a great area to innovate and work in, and just reach out and grab things. Don't necessarily listen to the status quo, invent new things, and go out there and make good things happen. And I think it's a great space to innovate.
Yes, it is definitely, and it's one that, like you say, has huge potential to have a positive impact on society and humanity, really, doesn't it? As a whole. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I think just on you mentioned kind of literacy places. So the ATP have got their literacy course on assessment, haven't they? That's a really good resource. It's worth saying that. I'm chatting to people from the Cambridge Assessment Network as well, coming up as well. So some really good resources out there.
Yeah, no, they're both really good, and in fact, the Cambridge people actually host the ATP course and help make it. So they're both very good and inexpensive and worth doing if you're getting into the field. Also, the various conferences. In fact, you've got a fantastic list of conferences that you just put out on the Test Community Network, but they're all good to go to. The ATP conferences in Europe and India and the US, and the assessment conferences, they're a really good place to connect with people. Also, ICE and some of the other conferences. Yeah.
Excellent. I know you've always been very supportive of everyone in the space, and you're always happy to have a conversation and chat. So I'm sure if anyone wants to get in contact with you and connect with you, I'm sure you're more than happy to facilitate their questions there. Well, thank you very much, John. I'm much appreciated. And well, I look forward to seeing you. Are you going to Innovations in March?
Yes, definitely. Excellent. Yes.
Definitely see you there. Maybe. Yeah, excellent. We'll see you in Orlando. You take care. Thanks, John.
And to you, Tim.
Bye-bye. Thanks, John. Excellent conversation there. Some really, really excellent advice. And I think the one thing that stands out from what John said was just that point about if you're in the career and you're learning the career, starting out, or even whatever stage you are in the process, make sure you get to grips with the fundamentals of fair and valid assessment. And there are obviously numerous resources out there. ATP does an excellent course, kind of almost like an introduction to assessment literacy. Nathan Thompson from Assessment Systems has some absolutely excellent resources on his site as well that kind of talk you through various different matters. And of course, you have the It Depends podcast, the one that I do with Amanda Danis, which we'll be looking forward to putting out some more episodes this year. And we try to kind of tackle some of the fundamental questions of psychometrics. I ask Amanda questions. She gives us amazing responses. I don't answer too many questions because she's the expert in there, although she does occasionally throw me a question, which always catches me off guard. Well, anyway, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with John, and I look forward to being back with you next week for another excellent interview. So thank you and bye-bye.